Ankle grabber. I had sex with your mother. No, seriously. I cleaned your pool, and then I had sex with her in your bed.
So that's illegal. We've got a real problem with sexualizing minors in media. Like, I get it. They're a bunch of hormonal adolescents cooped up with each other for 8 hours a day. I've been there. That makes sense. But oh my god, the amount of movies and television that not only portray, but romanticize and sexualize this type of relationship between underage children and adults is like really creepy. And oftentimes these stories will downplay the blatantly illegal acts, brushing the age difference off or making it seem like the relationship defies the social norms that we've rightfully set up. Over the last 70 years, the general narrative and sentiment behind underage kids and young adults having relationships with people twice their age has become more and more sexualized. People are really missing the point with books like Lolita and movies like The Graduate. And there's definitely a difference between how underage boys and girls are perceived when we see them in relationships with adults. Several video essayists have already commented on the problematic age difference between older men and younger women on screen and in real life. I'd recommend Ollie Sunvia's video on the pursuit and appeal of much older men, and Jordan Teresa's The Lolita Resurgence When History Repeats Itself as a great place to start. And I'd like to add to that conversation by talking about the relationship between older women and younger men in media, what I like to call the pool boy problem.
A very common neurosis, particularly in this society, whereby the male child subconsciously wishes to sleep with his mother. Of course, what puzzles me, Harold, is that you want to sleep with your grandmother.
Hollywood has been pairing young men with older women for a while now. With stand-up movies like The Graduate from 1967 and Harold and Maude from 1971, audiences have been conditioned to think about these relationships fondly. We remember the goofy and awkward disposition of Benjamin Bradford trying to sort out his post-college life and awkward social moments, and conflate that lightheartedness with the deliberate pressure from Mrs. Robinson to get Benjamin drunk and coerce him into sex during the first 10 minutes of the movie. Do-do-skidoo, Mrs. Robinson. Damn, that's catchy. In Harold and Maude, Harold's obsession with death might seem trite in an age of skull emojis and unaliving memes, but his morbid outlook on life was a breath of fresh air to audiences. And again, the novelty of a younger man befriending and ultimately having a romantic relationship with his older female friend is a meaningful component of the movie. But these examples are far from the worst to come out of the film industry, partially because it's made clear that while there is a large age difference between the younger man and the older woman, the men are 20 years old. By all means, grown up considering the time period. Is it still weird? Yeah, totally. It's like the minimum wage. Sure, there's going to be some creeps who stick to the very lowest number and would totally go lower if they could. But we gotta standardize it somehow, right? The second notable thing about these movies is that they use this taboo relationship to serve a deeper meaning within the narrative. The Graduate is an allegory for the aimlessness of young adults who are told how to live their lives by authority figures. And a playbook for the boys, am I right? Right? That was a test. If you went for the high five, you failed. Benjamin starts the movie bewildered by his own future, and as a result, he ends up in a toxic relationship that merely placates his naive outlook on life. His parents take care of him financially, and Mrs. Robinson takes care of him physically, and he falls into a passive existence. Mrs. Robinson is characterized as the manifestation of Benjamin's internal struggle to find meaning in life. It's only after he meets Elaine, the woman who inspires him to do something with himself, that he starts to take action. And by action, I mean driving up and down California while listening to the same Simon and Garfunkel song. I mean, come on guys, at least write a couple of backing tracks for this movie. They're like, damn. Mrs. Robinson tries to control his actions, manipulate his thoughts, and defame him when she loses her grip on him. It also doesn't help that the girl that Benjamin's fighting for is Mrs. Robinson's daughter. Talk about an awkward Thanksgiving dinner, am I right? Right? You guys gotta stop falling for this. The final scene of The Graduate reveals that Benjamin and Elaine are left to deal with the consequences of their actions and fully take control of their life. Now that's a story with a message. In Harold and Maude, Harold has a melancholy outlook on life that consumes him. Listening to too much My Chemical Romance there, buddy. I've been there. But his perspective begins to change after meeting Maude, who's nearing the end of her life but still is filled with so much wonder and energy. This happenstance friendship creates a paradigm shift for Harold, like discovering Adderall and hyperpop. The romantic relationship they share is a manifestation of this point of view. As weird as it is to say, Maude's character needs to be this old to illustrate how much life she's lived and reinforces the power of her resilience, even at her age. And did anybody notice she's like a Holocaust survivor? Like, damn, okay? You boy in the striped pajamas this relationship. I don't think this movie would have been as effective if she was in her, say, 30s or 40s. Maude doesn't try to manipulate Harold in any way and ends up taking her life at the end of the movie, despite their close bond. Harold is left to deal with the true grief from losing someone he holds dear, his first love, and he walks off into the sunset fully knowing what love, loss, and joy is. So do these movies pass the creepy vibe check? Yeah, as much as possible. They don't try to glorify these relationships. The characters and the actors themselves are all of age, consenting adults. And not only that, but the female characters are relatively well-developed people that have motives, autonomy in the story, and contextualize their own part in the relationship. Most significantly, their stories represent a meaning larger than the relationship itself. That should be the baseline for this theme in media. So now that we've set our expectations, let's have them absolutely demolished.
There are a lot of moms at your gigs, right?
I know. Seeing a 26-year-old man play a high school sophomore really buries the lead here. But Puck's character is supposed to be 16 years old. 16! And right off the bat, we get familiar with Puck's propensity to hook up with MILFs. See, even the word MILF is a manifestation of this kind of relationship. So the women Puck's having sex with are his clients. He is, after all, meeting most of them through his pool boy job. Unless he's been staking out PTA meetings for potential clients. And there's also the little fact that they're twice his age. While Puck may look and sound like he's on his 6th victory lap in school, he's still a kid, and he exemplifies one of the most critical differences between this modern media and our past examples. The younger boy is the one pursuing the older woman. Puck's whole personality the first few episodes of Glee boils down to being on the hunt for any potential women he can have sex with, his age or otherwise. That's pretty disgusting behavior. An unhealthy relationship with sex, at the very least, and some serious issues objectifying women. But here's the thing, even though he's actively seeking out these encounters, he's the victim in the relationship. These grown women are taking advantage of his naivete and underdeveloped prefrontal cortex for their own sexual gratification. There's no nuance or hesitation or self-reflection like shown in The Graduate. He consents and she consents, and that's the end of the discussion. But isn't there somebody they forgot to ask? You know, the law. But technically the age of consent in Ohio is 16, so who cares? Yeah guys, that's part of the problem too. And who let the libertarians in? This kid has to ask permission to go to the bathroom. He can't vote, he can't smoke, he can't drink. Hell, he can't even be enlisted in the army yet. And you know they'd love to recruit him right now. But if the Marines have to wait before they physically and mentally abuse him for the sake of the military-industrial complex, then Mrs. Butler down the street should also have to wait. Puck is a dramatically different characterization of this trope compared to The Graduate or Harold and Maude. There's no nuance in his relationship with these parents. He likes older women, he finds older women to have sex with, and that's about it. There's no internal struggle for his character that revolves around this behavior. He never has to reflect on these actions or confront any obstacles that makes him change his ways. Matter of fact, Puck is supposed to be a cool kid. He's on the football team, he's too cool for school or Glee Club, even though he joins like a meat-headed lemming.
But are you quitting to join Homo Explosion?
Baby, can't you see my mind's a burning hell?
He bullies queer kids like it's going out of style. The way the writers paint these actions like he's some kind of rock star stud who everybody is jealous of contributes to this misguided acceptance of who he's being intimate with. Over the last 50 years, men having sex with a lot of people has become a symbol of status and masculinity, and even more so if the women are way older than you. Except not too old. And also, you have to be underage for some reason? Like, what's going on here? Getting a woman in power to be vulnerable, romantic, or sexual as a younger man is like this exclusive symbol of masculinity. And let's not forget, the woman's perspective is never talked about. They're objectified to a cartoonish degree, and the act of them having a sexual relationship with a younger man ruins their integrity as an authority figure. Downplaying the role of the older women in these stories not only dehumanizes them, but also minimizes their autonomy in the relationship. These adult figures have hooked up with this adolescent boy and are never really brought up again. What drove them to have sex with a minor? Do they feel guilty for what they've done? How does it affect their relationship with their own children? None of this context is provided in the show, and without it, we're left with a hollow character trait for a womanizing kid. Shows like Glee have convinced people that boys having sex with their teacher or their friend's mom is cool because she's in a position of power over them, and they're just too mature and irresistible and underage to be spared that kind of obvious physical violation. But no. It's all good if he's the one making the first move, and he looks cool by doing it. Yes, the high school jock can still be the victim of sexual crimes, and that's a big misconception a lot of people will use to brush off how problematic this depiction of a relationship is. I should probably mention that Mark Salling, the guy who plays Puck in the show, was found guilty of possessing child pornography and ended up unaliving himself in jail. Is that ironic? I can't tell anymore.
Let's go check out Angela's room.
Wait a minute! Who are you?
Remember how I was talking about how sex for men is a symbol of status? Nowhere for that is more apparent than the movie mid-90s. The crazy part is this is one of the more normal things that happens in the movie. And that's not saying much. We follow the character Stevie as he navigates a violent home life and tries to fit in with some new friends he made at a skate shop. Desperate to impress these older boys, he attends a party where he meets a girl several years older than him. She invites him into a bedroom, and we get to see a very intimate scene between a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old. Oh. Well, that's not too bad, right? Well, don't unclutch your pearls yet, because Sonny, the child who plays Stevie in the movie, is 11. And the girl he's making out with, she's 27. 27, dude. 27. 27. Ooh, 27. The audience is led into a dark room and shown the A24 equivalent of softcore child porn. Like, at a certain point, what are we doing here? What are we trying to prove by having a prepubescent boy have his first kiss on screen with a woman who could be his mother? Were there literally no 16-year-olds available to make this even slightly less creepy? No, we had to find a woman more than double the actor's age because she was the right fit for the movie. That's crazy. That's crazy, right? I'm not the only one who sees a problem with this, right? This movie had a whole team of producers behind it. That scene had to get approved by at least a dozen people before it went out to audiences. And literally nobody was like, hey, we have a young child who's supposed to make out with a much older woman. Is this necessary to show? Were his parents there? Like, did they sign off on this? This kid went from pre-algebra to second base in the same workday. So the reason they put this scene in the movie was to show how strong peer pressure is among boys. His friends congratulate him for hooking up with a girl, and his social status is reaffirmed because he's performing masculinity successfully, clearly at the cost of his own personal boundaries. Most of the movie leading up to this scene shows Stevie as the victim of toxic masculinity, being abused by his brother and insulted for his emotional intelligence and lack of social awareness. As the plot progresses, he falls further and further into bad habits like drinking and smoking in an effort to be accepted by the people he looks up to. And this sexual encounter contributes to the change of his behavior at the sacrifice of his own comfort. Yeah, but if they're both underage, technically it's not illegal, right? Dude, who keeps letting these libertarians in here, man? First of all, statutory rape is a thing, so that's off the table. And secondly, you can't really give enthusiastic consent if you don't even know what you're consenting to. So that's what tea tastes like. Again, this example contrasts so differently from the baseline we set up. While mid-90s is trying to critique the social pressure that boys experience with sex and masculinity, do the ends really justify the means? We could have experienced the same type of battle Stevie goes through without actually showing any type of intimacy. Matter of fact, it would have been even more impactful if our character, who's demonstrated emotional awareness and intuition up to this point, used that behavior to be honest with this girl and tell her he doesn't know what he's doing or if he wants to do it. They could have a tender moment when she's not even sure if she wants to share this moment either, and they could have bonded over that mutual discomfort before going out and lying about hooking up. Boom. Stevie gets more street cred, we reinforce the innocence and purity he eventually loses just a little bit longer, and we avoid an 11-year-old making out with a 27-year-old. What bugs me about movies that lean so hard into taboo subjects like this is that they're so convinced that it won't be as effective if they don't literally show what's happening. It's just like those tacky comedians who keep complaining about cancel culture ruining everything. Yeah, I can't make jokes about anything anymore. At the end of the day, what you're really saying is that you're a hack who can't be funny without attacking others. Pushing the boundaries of storytelling at the expense of the actors goes the same way. Write a better story. But really, this is just a small part of mid-90s. That plot point is over and done with in mere minutes. Let's look at an example that centers the underage male of age female relationship.
You know, I'm 25, right? I can be your friend, but I can't be your girlfriend. That's illegal. Before I watched Licorice Pizza, I could have sworn the age difference was maybe going to be like
5 years or something. But Alana is 25 in the movie, 10 years older than her love interest Gary Valentine, who's 15. An entire decade. She was graduating high school before he was out of elementary. And that's just the character's age. Alana Haim, the actual actor, was 28 when they filmed this movie, while her co-star Cooper Hoffman was at most 17 during filming. Also, unrelated, Cooper Hoffman is the son of the late Philip Seymour Hoffman. Rest in peace, buddy. But we've got a case of the Nepo babies here. And that's just on his side. Alana Haim's entire family is played by her real-life family. This movie is dripping in self-sucking, congratulatory ass-kissing. But back to the sexual predator stuff. The movie doesn't even try to deny that these two are going to end up together by the end. Gary is a self-absorbed child star who's really the epitome of white male excellence. We don't see any father figure in his life, so it's assumed he has to become the man of the house. And this self-imposed maturity and need to grow up contributes to this illusion that he's mature for his age. But at the same time, we see his fame-fueled ego lead to sexist double standards. And somehow Alana is just as bad as he is. Worse, actually, because she tries to date not one, but two underage child stars. After Gary Valentine fumbles the bag early in the movie, she starts to date Lance, who also proceeds to fumble the bag. And then she goes right back to Gary.
Hello, handsome.
I wonder why they weren't ready to date a 25-year-old. Maybe it's because they're children, and worse still, child actors. And she even mentions that she's spending time with them because of the economic opportunities they could give her if she stays with them.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that? He was maybe gonna be my boyfriend.
Listen, young lady, you don't bring this idiot to Shabbat dinner here.
Listen, Dad, he's an atheist and an actor, and he's famous.
But he's Jewish.
He was gonna take me out of here, Essie. Don't you even look at me.
So she's a starstruck 20-something looking to escape her boring life, and one of these dummies is going to be her ticket out of there. This is kind of a weird dehumanizing view of these kids, viewing them as opportunities for social advancement and taking advantage of their attraction to her. The secondary motive actually presents an interesting power dynamic though. Obviously, Alana holds the responsibility and most of the power in their friendships to make sure it never crosses the line. But the wealth, power, and influence Gary and Lance hold over her presents a very strong economic power imbalance. Gary is literally Alana's boss for a good portion of the movie, and boy does it get uncomfortable, literally ending up with him sexualizing her for profit. All of these plot points serve to muddy the waters of a very clear problem. Alana is way older than both of these guys, and her reciprocating any physical or emotional interest in them is a problem. That's not to say that Gary and Lance aren't sexist, opportunistic dicks, but they also aren't of age yet. Alana isn't this evil mastermind though. She clearly has some daddy issues which come out halfway through the movie when she's being wooed by a much older star, Jack Holden, and later on with the deranged John Peters, who makes sure you know how to pronounce Barbara Streisand. Streisand? Streisand? Streisand. Streisand? Streisand?
No, like Streisand.
Sand.
Streisand.
Streisand.
Honestly, you start to feel bad for her after being sexually assaulted at work, coerced into a drink with a famous movie star. Hell, she even finds out her political crush is gay. The girl's just got plain bad luck in the dating department. She really can't catch a break. Or find somebody her own age to date, which wouldn't be hard to do. I mean, look at Brian here, a smart, attractive, of age guy who she likes and shows interest in a very polite and easing way. The movie could have had them end up together and, made a good point about how love born out of power imbalances is inherently flawed and can easily lead to manipulation and worse. But nope, that wouldn't be the fun type of Hollywood flick we're familiar with. We have to reinforce hitting on minors, especially when they're rich and famous. Where movies like The Graduate and Harold and Maude succeed in making this romance embody a theme larger than itself, Licorice Pizza falls flat. What's the lesson here? If you're a white man with prospects, you can get anything you want? I mean, it's true, but that's not much of a lesson. Women are just opportunistic gold diggers who are looking to advance their lives at all costs? I sure hope not. But if you're going to make either of these the theme, then make it apparent. Imagine getting an ending scene showing the downtrodden Mr. and Mrs. Valentine, scorned lovers who have grown to resent each other because of their foolish actions when they were younger. This movie reads as the romantic origin story for the abusive parents in your typical 90s coming-of-age story. At the very least, the characters in The Graduate have a minute to reckon with their life-altering decision that they made at the end of the movie. We don't get any of the reflection or self-awareness, nothing. Just a hollow movie about an underage prick and a headstrong cradle robber. First things first, if you didn't pick up on this already, all of these examples are white. White people alert. White people alert. 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 Movie with white people, about white people, with no minority casts. I want to make it clear I didn't intentionally leave out POC stories in this analysis. These were just the stories that are either well known or I had experience with previously. I know I need to do a better job of making this analysis more inclusive. So if you've thought of any examples that centers non-white experiences, comment below. I'd love to hear them. I also don't want to make it seem like this is only happening to men. Hollywood systematically takes advantage of women in truly horrific ways, and they've only recently been acknowledged more broadly due to the Me Too movement and recent progressions in media representation. Tropes like the casting couch and other disgusting tactics used by male figures in power to take advantage of women is more violent, more prevalent, and more damaging considering the disproportionate amount of women in film and television. I'm definitely going to cover that in a future video, but for now, back to the analysis. So how does this media affect us in real life? Film and television reflect the world around us, and there's an ongoing conversation between the two that continually reinforces social tropes. If we correlate masculinity with promiscuity, especially with older women, then we're doing both genders a disservice. Firstly, it completely removes the power, autonomy, and perspective of women from this conversation. That's an integral part of combating this trope. Secondly, pressuring young men to always want sex and basing their social status off of whether they have is damaging to their upbringing. It encourages sexist and misogynistic thought patterns towards women and forces boys to ignore their personal boundaries for social acceptance. Now you're probably wondering about the writers of these movies and shows. Every single example was written and directed by a man, and that certainly contributes to how the main characters are perceived and what the tone of the movie is. Knowing that Jonah Hill wrote and directed mid-90s makes way more sense, especially after seeing the whole Boundaries debacle play out earlier this year. But more and more, these pieces of media romanticize the relationship with an older woman. I mean, we literally have an anthem dedicated to trying to get with your friend's mom. Stacy's mom is getting charged with sex crimes for an underage minor. Dun dun. But seriously, despite the absolute banger that track is, it describes the current sentiments around these relationships from the male perspective. And while it's not as often talked about, there are younger men in Hollywood that have gotten into relationships with much older women who have either had direct or indirect power over them. Aaron Taylor Johnson started a relationship with Sam Joplin, the director of Nowhere Boy, when he starred in the film as an 18-year-old while she was 41 years old. This relationship lasted over a decade in which they married and had 2 children together. The length and seeming stability of the relationship is impressive for such a large age gap. But again, there was a clear power imbalance between them in both age and in their work. I mean, can you imagine adults sexualizing Finn Wolfhard in front of a crowd while he's underage?
Finn Wolfhard, an actor born with the greatest porn name ever.
Really puts a great thing on my future.
Or maybe an interviewer getting a little bit too personal with Justin Bieber?
Really? See, my parents never gave me the sex talk.
Okay.
So why don't you give me the sex talk?
I feel uncomfortable right now.
Or maybe an award show host getting way too handsy with Justin Bieber?
I feel violated right now.
Or maybe Katy Perry also getting too grabby with Justin Bieber? Like, holy cow, this poor kid. Both of these guys had their personal lives and space invaded while they were just trying to go through puberty in peace. The clear discomfort seen by Finn and Justin was largely brushed off because of the gender roles we placed onto them, though Patton Oswalt did end up apologizing. At the same time that we're encouraging boys to pursue sex and value romantic relationships with older women, we're sexualizing them and downplaying their discomfort to feed into a hypersexual narrative. Media should not be sexualizing anyone under the age of 18, male or female. It shouldn't glorify problematic relationships and boil them down into symbols of social status. And it should have something more to say about the relationship that younger characters do have, especially if they're with older people. If the only subtext in your problematic romance is the fact that it's problematic, then you're not really saying anything new or interesting. Thank you for watching to the end on this one. It was definitely a heavy one, but I'm glad you stuck with me. I'll definitely be circling back to this topic regarding underage women and older men, but I want to make sure I'm saying something that's worth being said. I hope this didn't come off as a whole like men's rights activist rant or anything. If any of you guys are watching, get some help, like read some theory. Feminism has you covered here. If you want more media analysis content, I've got you covered. And if you want to know when I upload next, which should be pretty soon, get subscribed. Later, Gator. Barbra Streisand. Streisand? Streisand. Barbra Streisand. Streisand. Streisand or Streisand? Streisand. Barbra Streisand. Mrs. Robinson, Jesus, like Maude, you will know. Wow, wow, wow. White people.